So as Mairead said earlier, we have invited some very special guests to join us today, and they've very kindly agreed to share their stories. I feel a little bit emotional. They are members of donor families and transplant recipient families. The gift of transplantation begins when families such as those you're about to meet are able to think of others at the time that's very immense pain. I'd like to introduce Russ.
First of all, thanks very much for having me. I normally get wheeled out when there's 4 or 5 doctors to talk to about this, so to have this many people here is great. I have 17 points to get through, and I'm told I have 10 minutes to get it done, so I'll get through it fast. The purpose of this is that, of what I'm about to tell you, is that I often help out on a Donate Life stand on Donate Life Week, handing out pens and things like that to try to bring awareness. And quite often, I would say probably 2 or 3 times in the time that I'm there, I hear, oh, what would you know what it's like to be getting asked the question, can we have your loved one's organs after they've died? I can answer that question, but you obviously don't want to embarrass the person. But to answer that question is what I want you guys to get, is that it's not what you think. And I'll step you through the process of what happened with myself, and because I've got older I need glasses now. Okay, so my brother died in 2008, and he had a dream before he died, was to get over to Chile. And the reason he had that dream was because the type of person he is, he stowed away on one of those cattle boats. And when I mean stowed away, he got on the boat, didn't tell anyone he was going, not even the government or myself, didn't take a passport, went over there, got off with the cattle, pretending he was some sort of medical person that helped the cattle, a vet of some kind, went off with the cattle and just kept walking. And then he was skiing, snow skiing, and then had to work out how to get back home. Didn't know how to do that, and so he rang me and said, could I send his passport to him? So this was just before, about a year before all of this happened. That'd give you an idea of the type of person he is. I ended up sending his passport to him between 2 CDs so that they couldn't read the metal strip, and had to think of all sorts of criminal ways of getting things to him. So I got him that, I got him the money he needed, and he flew back on an airline which was later found out that it was called like Duct Tape Airlines. It only had 3 planes and it took a while to get back. And because it took a while to get back, it didn't run for a while, and he organised 20 or 30 odd people to protest while standing on top of their desk. We want Qantas, and they finally, everybody got Qantas tickets after 3 or 4 days, and they all got to fly home on Qantas. So he was a sort of person that made things happen. His plan for the future was to go back, was to get back to Chile, and he'd found a place that only cost $40,000, and if you don't know what it's like in what he called Chile, which I agree is the right way to say it, but he found a way that they said they pay no taxes, and he said that there was a $40,000 house, Australian, that backed onto a snow resort, but no one wanted it because it backed onto a snow resort, but as far as you could see was yours. And that's what he wanted to. He said, you could come over, Russ, and stay on one side of the building and I wouldn't even know you were there. That's not a bad way to live. But what he wanted to do was to be a scaffolder. He wanted to move to Canberra. He got his scaffolding ticket on a Friday. And this is where it gets broken down into a matter of hours. He got his scaffolding ticket on the Friday, and somebody at the place where he'd done his course, we just finished it, said, you need to join a union. He said, I ain't joining no union. He said, you won't get onto any building site if you don't join the union. He goes, I'm not joining any union. I don't have the money to join a union. So anyway, they just kept continually hounding him for the next 15 minutes, and unlike my brother, he gave in. He never normally gives in. He signed up, and within about half an hour, he got hit on his motorbike on the way to the pub at the left bank to have a celebratory drink with his friends. He got hit side on, and he come off his motorbike, hit a lamppost, hit a tree, died. That decision to join him into the union, half an hour earlier, they paid for his funeral costs, plus reimbursed the amount of the ticket that he'd just got, plus sent the ticket to the family so that they knew that he had achieved something, towards his goal. It was a big deal for us at the time to receive that later on. Good news. I'm up to point 5, so we're on our way. I had never spoken to my brother about organ donation in the past. So I'm one of that 6 out of 10 that you saw up there that had never spoken to him. But I did get rung by a professional, the wonderful professionals at Donate Life, that had me want to contribute. So then that's the 7 out of 10 that we also saw, that makes a big difference. I had my mother give me a call, hysterical, that my brother had died. That there's only the 2 of us. He's my younger brother. He was 30 when he died, 8 years younger than me at the time. And I remember thinking, if this is another one of Glenn's stunts, I'm going to kick his ass, because he's put my mother through hell, right? So I really didn't think that it hadn't sunk in that he'd died. I remember I was thinking that I'm going to get him in a headlock when I speak to him later on. And I also got told by my mother that someone from organ donation people are going to call and that she had to identify the body. So I said, okay, send your husband down. He's a police officer. So I said to send him down because he'd identified bodies before. And it'll be less traumatic on my mum. And I said, let the donation people give me a call and I'll sort that out. Now, I don't think that was any form of stepping up. But here's the point where people say you don't know what it's like to have to call or speak to a person that has just had a loved one die. I'll let you know what it was like for me. I can't speak for others. But what it was like for me is I told my daughter, she was 10 at the time, she just walked out of the room. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to deal with that. Then the phone rang. So I thought, all right, I'll deal with it. It's probably something to do with my brother. Somebody was ringing me for an ad that I'd put in the paper. I spent 2 hours on the phone with them and I sold my business. Completely put aside that I had just had my brother had died. And I knew that when I got off the phone, things would go back to I have to sort that out. So I sold my business in 2 hours on the phone. My daughter comes back into the room and she'd written this awesome poem. Now, she could write stuff, but I had never seen her write a poem like this before about her uncle that had died. I then got the phone call that confirmed my brother had died. The next phone call was from Donate Life. And they simply checked that you're okay. You answer a series of questions like, was he a drug user? Had he recently been over into other countries? Has he been in the UK? All sorts of questions that come up. And my thought process at the time was that he wasn't going to be a number. He was going to be someone that made a difference if we were going to do this at all. What I got was a feeling of, we'll look after him. That's what was there for me. I got that because of the training that the Donate Life coordinators have when they call. Like you guys are specialists in what you do, they're specialists in what they do. All you need to be able to do is to identify it, the potential candidate, and then pass them on to a Donate Life coordinator who does all of the rest. The most difficult part for me after that phone call was that my dad was going to call me. My family knew, all of my extended families, aunts and uncles and so on, but my dad was on his way to Vanuatu on his yacht and he was uncontactable. Occasionally he would get something I believe he calls the skip or something like that, where a phone will pick it up for seconds. When I got the phone call from him, it was 2 or 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep properly, but what I got from him was that he was strapped to the top of the mast because I could hear the clink, 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 and he had tied himself to that, and he said, "What's wrong? I've got hundreds of phone calls of people, of everyone I know saying to call you." And I knew that I only had seconds to say something because I've done this with him before, and you only get to say your one thing, and I had to say it as brutally as this: Glenn's dead. That was probably the hardest thing that I had to do, not take the phone call from the donor coordinator, but to tell my dad that his son, his youngest son, is now dead, and the phone just went off. So I knew that I had left my dad with probably the worst information that you could tell a parent, and nothing he could do. He was in stormy weather heading towards Vanuatu. 3 days later, my dad was in Perth. He'd got the boat turned around and went against the wind, which I'm led to believe is something you have to tack and jive, and I'm not a boaty person, but it's some nasty thing that you have to do. Instead of going in a straight line, you've got to go 100 kilometres this way and that way, and eventually you get there. So he was a big support to me. This next part, I want you to know that it's gonna circle back, so give me a second. For me, Charlie Teo, who you would all be familiar with in this room, he's my hero and my inspiration in my life. I'm sure that in my mind, when he goes into surgery, he has a red cape on and his jock's on the outside and he does whatever is required. He's a superhero to me. And I'm equally sure that he doesn't have written on his business card that he's a superhero, and probably doesn't like the hero name that he would get called. Recipients of organs have told me that I'm a hero. Now, I will admit I don't like being called that hero, because all I did was I said, yeah, okay, sounds like a fair thing to do. You're going to help somebody else live. When my brother died, as far as I know, we're up to about 30 people that we've helped either have a better quality of life or live longer because of one thing that I said, which was just, yeah, sure, take whatever you need. He doesn't need it anymore. The difference that person made that thought to contact a donor coordinator, I got to make a difference to at least 30 and counting people. My brother, myself, and that donor coordinator, the 3 of us. I don't like the title of being called a hero for that. And I even got thanked by a senior doctor here as I got here. Thanks very much for coming to talk about this. It's not that I need thanks for it or even want thanks for it. I just want people to know that it's not as traumatic as what everyone says for me and potentially others as what they make it out it could or would be like. How it actually is not that way for me. The true hero for myself is the person that plucked up the courage to call the donor coordinator. I can make a difference to 30 people. In your positions, imagine how many, you're already making a difference in what you're doing, but imagine how many more people you could help in your position for who you could help now. There's one thing I want to leave you with. I heard a quote from a doctor that I admire just recently, Dr. Bruce Powell. He used to be the State Medical Director for Donate Life. He said, "We're only doctors. The patients that we work with are the ones where the stories are, and we are lucky if we witness that." So my message here is today is to help others have their story live on and be part of that story. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Russ.